In today's video, we are going to solve another case study together. This one is a market entry case study and it simulates the exact structure of a Mckinsey BCG or a Bain interview or any other case interview for that matter. The case has a business context, then it has a few exhibits which I'm going to go through at the start of this video. After that, we are going to go through the questions. How I want you to solve the case with me is after each question, pause the video, draft the answer in your mind or draw out the structure, do the math, whatever it is. Then come back to this video and see what an ideal answer should be like. I always say there's no one way to solve a case, but directionally it should only be moving in one direction. That is to the final recommendation. So let's get started. Okay, so our client is Golden Clover Chicken and it wants to enter Vietnam. Let's look at the business situation. Our client GCC is a 620 unit quick service fried chicken chain based in US, generating 1.1 billion in annual system-wide sales. GCC has never operated outside its home market, which is US. Its menu centers on spicy fried chicken buckets and family meals with a $14 average check. Basically, it's a KFC that wants to enter Vietnam. The CEO is evaluating Vietnam as GCC's first international market and has asked you, should GCC enter Vietnam, and if so, how? You will have some data on Vietnam's quick service restaurant market, the competitive landscape, GCC's capabilities, and the investments required to enter. This context is followed by some exhibits. Let's go through it one by one. The first exhibit is Vietnam QSR market, which is an overview of each of the segments: fried chicken, burgers, noodles and rice bowls, etc. and what is its year 1 and year 2 market size. Based on this, I think at some point we will be calculating the growth rate year 1 and year 2 and assessing the attractiveness of the market. The second exhibit is fried chicken segment competitive landscape. So over here it shows the different local competitors that are already present in Vietnam and what is their market share. What I can see on a high level is that it's a very concentrated market because the biggest competitor has 42% of market share, which is huge, and the second biggest has 25% market share. So competition wise, seems like it's going to be a bit tricky to enter the market. Exhibit 3 is GCC's capability scorecard versus Vietnam's requirements. So what GCC has today across a few pillars. Number 1 is brand awareness, menu, product market fit, local supply chain, store operations playbook, etc. And it has also mentioned over here what is the requirement to win in Vietnam. Then we have exhibit 4, which is essentially the entry investment, how much money it will cost to enter the new market and how much profits each of the stores will be generating. Based on this, at some point we can see in how long a period GCC will be able to recover its initial investment. Last exhibit is the entry mode comparison. You can either build a new presence altogether, you can buy a new presence by buying a competitor in Vietnam, or you can partner with someone like a joint venture. So these are your 3 options. Which one is the best one for you? It has a quick comparison in terms of capital required, what is the speed to build up 15 stores, what is the risk, like any regulatory risk, any local market knowledge risk, those kind of things. So with that, let's move on to the first question. And the first question, as you can imagine, is going to be how you are going to structure the case. So it goes, before you see any data, how would you structure your approach to understand whether GCC should enter Vietnam or not? Now, this is a typical market entry case. So you will be using the market entry framework. Let's go through it in the next page. So essentially, the first pillar that you want to look at when you are deciding if a player enters a new market is the market attractive in first place. What is the size of the market? How fast is it growing? And what are the competitors doing in the market as well? Second pillar is what are the company capabilities? Does it have the operational capabilities to enter a new market? What does the product market fit look like in the new market? Is the product that it has actually fitting the new market? What is the brand power that they have? Do they have any brand awareness in the new market? Number 3 is the financial viability. How much money does the company have? How much money will be required? Like what investment will be required to enter the market, etc. And lastly, if we have decided that yes, it is a good market to enter for GCC, then how should we enter? Build, buy or partner. These are the 4 pillars that hopefully we will be evaluating further in the next few questions. Okay, with that, we move to the next question, which is calculate each segment's growth rate against the blended market benchmark. Which segment is the priority for entry, and does the absolute dollar size of the opportunity confirm that? Now for this, what we are going to do is we are going to go back to our exhibit number 1, where we had for each of the subsegments what is the year 1 and year 2 market size. Based on that, we are going to calculate the growth rate for each of the segments and what is the dollar value of the market growth, which is what we have done in this table that I've mentioned over here. So what we see overall, the QSR market is growing at 7.1%. However, some of the subsegments like fried chicken is actually growing at a very fast rate, 14%, double the growth rate of market average. The other two segments, burgers and noodles and rice bowls, are not growing so fast. What I've also done is also put in the dollar value of the growth. For fried chicken, we see that year on year the growth is 120 million almost, while for burgers and noodle and rice bowls it's much smaller, like 84 million and 105 million respectively. Actually, noodles and rice bowls is a big market, right? But growth rate seems to be quite low, means it's a saturated kind of a market already. Given that fried chicken market is growing at a very fast rate, as well as the growth rate in terms of absolute dollar value is also one of the highest, the market does look quite attractive to enter for GCC. However, a good answer should also mention here that the competition doesn't look very good yet. So that is definitely something we need to be mindful of, and it is a risk. With that, let's move on to the next question. Okay, in the next page, I have the conclusion and some answer pointers for you guys to refer to. Question number 3 is a judgment-based question. It says GCC's average US check is $14, built around fried chicken buckets. Exhibit 2's segment leader, Golden Wing, holds 42% of a share with a $6 average check only, built around rice combo meals. So we are starting to see that the price point is quite different in Vietnam, and the product and the food product that works in Vietnam also seems to be a little bit unique, because in US it's fried chicken buckets, but in Vietnam it's the rice combo meals. Overall, how does GCC's company capabilities look like to enter Vietnam? What hypothesis do you have, and how would you test each of those? I think for this, we need to go back to where we had our company capabilities, right? Where we had 4 pillars: brand awareness, menu, market, product fit, etc. And we had what GCC has today versus what is the requirement to win. In this table, I have also included a gap just for us to understand and discuss whether the gap for GCC to enter the new market is big or small, or it's manageable. So first thing we have over here is brand awareness. So far we know that GCC has a very high brand awareness in US. However, it doesn't have any awareness at all in Vietnam. So the gap to be met is very big. Secondly, the menu and product market fit. This is specifically this question where we know that competitor prices its average ticket size as $6 per check, while in US GCC has $14 per check, which is quite high. And the food format that worked in US is fried buckets, but what seems to be working in Vietnam is the rice combo format. So there's a big gap to be met, both in terms of the food format as well as the price. Then we have a few other aspects not necessarily related directly to this question, but we can fill in the gap as we go through it. Local supply chain has a very mature US poultry network, but in Vietnam they don't have any presence yet, so that's a big gap to be met again. Store operations playbook. I think this is just a operations playbook for a QSR segment, which can obviously be replicated in whichever market our client moves to. In US today, it already has a proven 620 store system, so it has a transferable operating system. The gap in this category seems to be small. Now, what are the hypotheses that we have? Firstly, price point mismatch. So we know that if GCC wants to enter Vietnam, then it needs to localize its menu heavily to bring down its costs to be able to come to a check value of about 6 to 8. It also probably needs to procure raw materials locally, and the menu needs heavy adaptation to cater to local taste buds. Hypothesis number 3 is about the brand awareness gap, where GCC basically doesn't have any presence in Vietnam, so it does need to meet that gap somehow. Then coming to how do we test each of these hypotheses. Hypothesis 1 is price point mismatch. This one we can try to see what is the per capita QSR spend in Vietnam versus in US, and we can also run a willingness to pay survey to understand how much customers are actually willing to pay. Hypothesis 2 is the meal format mismatch. Since we know that our biggest competitor has a proven format, food format already, we can go ahead with that. We can do a consumer survey, we can do a pop-up with some fried chicken buckets as well as the rice combo and see which one sells more. We can obviously also do some consumer surveys. For the brand awareness gap, we can always do some brand awareness surveys. We can compare marketing spend needed to reach trial parity, etc. So by the end of this question, we should be clear and we should mention to the interviewer that while GCC can enter Vietnam, it does seem like currently it doesn't have a good product market fit. So local adaptation of the menu is heavily needed in this case. And with that, let's move on to the next question, which is calculate GCC's payback period for the Vietnam entry. Break the total investment into its store level and market level pieces. Why does that split matter? For this, we will go back to our exhibit where they had mentioned the entry investment needed and the unit economics at each store. So essentially from these two tables, what we see is total year one investment is about 8.75 million and the EBITDA for 15 stores is about 3.24 million. So if the investment is 8.75 million, total EBITDA is 3.34 million, then the payback period becomes a simple math problem. That is 8.75 divided by 3.24 million, and the answer is 2.7 years. However, remember the question actually asked us what is the investment into its store level and market level pieces. So at the market level, we have this one-time entry cost as well, which is 2 million for market entry, licensing, setup, etc. This is a one-time cost. This has nothing to do with the day-to-day operations. This has also nothing to do with the number of stores that are being opened. So whether GCC opens 5 stores or 15 stores or 500 stores, the entry cost is still going to remain about 2 million. So the real payback is actually going to be based on 6.75 million divided by 3.24 million, which means excluding the one-time cost. And that comes out to be about, I think, 2.1 years. If you remember, the question also asked us, why does that split matter? And that is because the market entry cost of 2 million is just a one-time cost. As soon as GCC decides to enter the market, it's a sunk cost, right? You have just spent it. While the 6.75 million actually scales with the number of stores you open. The more number of stores you open, the higher this number is going to be. What GCC can always do is just open 5 stores. Their store level capital will come down to about 2.25 million only. It can still absorb the 2 million market entry cost, and that's going to be a good way to pilot the new business model in a new market. With that, let's move on to the next question. Compare GCC's 3 options for entering Vietnam. Build, buy or partner. Which entry mode would you recommend and why? For this, obviously, we are going back to our original exhibit where build, buy and partner investments are compared. Let's look at this table over here. I've just copy pasted it from the exhibit. Essentially, it says that if GCC was to build organically, then the capital required is about 8.75 million. The speed to 15 stores is 2 years. It's quite a long time. Plus, the licensing and regulatory risk, local market knowledge is going to be very different from what a winning company needs. The licensing regulatory risk is going to be high. GCC obviously has no local market knowledge at this point. Now, when we compare this to buy, what do we see? Buy looks even worse because the investment required is 45 million. It's almost 5 times. Speed to 15 stores is going to be quite immediate in this case because it's just going ahead and buying a company. The risk is also going to be low. The local market and menu knowledge is also going to be high. So in all the 3 aspects, it's okay, just that the investment required in this case is very high. Now moving to the middle ground, which is partnering or a joint venture, we see that the capital required is actually the lowest. It's even lower than building organically. The speed to 15 stores is 12 to 15 months, which is still much lower than 24 months in building organically. Licensing regulatory risk is quite low because there's a local partner. Local market and menu knowledge is also obviously going to be very high because there's a local partner. So overall, after weighing all of these options, it does seem like if GCC goes for the joint venture, then with a very less capital investment, it can speed up to 15 stores in about 1 year or so with very less risk. So in this case, our recommendation for GCC should be to go in a joint venture to enter the market. Because if it decides to build organically, then not only is it a slow ramp up, but the risks are also quite high. With that, we'll move on to the last question. That is, you have 5 minutes to present your recommendation to GCC's board. What would you recommend and why? This is your time to summarize the entire case in 5 minutes. Generally, it is always a good idea to start with a recommendation first. So we are going to go with something like, GCC is our client who wants to enter a new market, Vietnam, and they have come to us to know if they should actually do so. And overall, our recommendation is yes to enter the market because number one, we saw the attractiveness of the market is quite high. It's a big market, it's fast growing, but the only risk is competition because it's a very concentrated market today as well. So our first recommendation is yes, you can enter. Secondly, we looked at the product market fit and we ran into some findings. We saw that today's product that GCC has in US does not fit at all to the Vietnam market. So menu adaptation is going to be required. Third recommendation on how should they enter. Most likely option for GCC is to do a joint venture to ramp up fully to 15 stores in about a year while keeping its risks and capital investment required minimum. In this entire situation, the risk is still going to be competition because the two competitors hold about 67% of the market share. So to de-risk that, GCC can consider a pilot of about 5 stores in say one of the bigger cities like Ho Chi Minh before it decides to scale up fully. In the next page, I've also given a sample answer for you guys to refer to. And with that, we are at the end of this case. Hope you guys liked solving this video with me today. If you did, hit the like button and please comment karke mujhe batao if you face any challenges in doing this kind of a practice, a case study with me so that I can improve in the next few videos. And if you face any other challenges in your consulting journey, please leave them in the comments as well so that I can bring more relevant videos to you. For any reason, if you're not subscribed to the channel already, please do subscribe because I am planning to bring a lot more of these solve a case study with me kind of videos so that your journey to consulting can become a little bit easier. Bye!